Captain Jake Morrison stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his hands clasped behind his back as he waited for permission to speak. The massive room stretched out before him like a cathedral made of crystal and light. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the curved seats that rose up in tiers around the central speaking platform. Some looked like giant snakes with arms. Others appeared to be living crystals that hummed when they moved. The air smelled strange, a mix of chemicals and gases that different species needed to breathe. Jake had been humanity's representative to the Council for 5 years now. In that time, he had watched humans become known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and skilled diplomats. They sold goods, shared technology, and helped settle disputes between other species. Most aliens saw humans as useful but weak. They thought humans were too emotional and too willing to compromise. Today was different. Today, Jake carried news that would test everything the galaxy thought they knew about humanity. The council speaker, a tall creature that looked like it, was made of living metal, finally gestured for Jake to approach the podium. Its voice echoed through the chamber like the sound of bells ringing. The human representative may now present his petition to the council. Jake walked forward slowly. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some delegates were already making the soft clicking sounds that meant they were amused. They expected another boring trade dispute or a request for help with some minor problem. "Honored delegates," Jake began, his voice steady and clear. "I come before you today to report a grave violation of galactic law. The HFY Empire has begun attacking and enslaving human colonies in the Outer Rim territories." A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. The HFY were known as aggressive warriors, but they usually only fought other military powers. Going after peaceful human settlements was unusual, even for them. Jake continued. 3 weeks ago, the colony on New Denver was attacked without warning. The HFY forces killed anyone who resisted and took the rest as slaves. 2 days later, they hit the farming world of Green Valley. Yesterday, we lost contact with the mining station at Rocky Point. The speaker's metal features shifted into what might have been a frown. "Do you have proof of these claims, human representative?" Jake activated a small device in his hand. Holographic images appeared in the air above the podium. They showed burning buildings, destroyed ships, and worst of all, humans in chains being loaded onto HFY transport vessels. The images were clear and undeniable. "These recordings were made by our emergency beacons before the colonies fell," Jake said. "As you can see, this was not war. This was conquest and enslavement." More murmurs filled the chamber, but Jake noticed something troubling. Many of the delegates did not seem shocked or angry. Instead, they looked bored or even amused. The serpentine Zephyrian delegate actually made a sound that Jake knew was their version of laughter. The Zephyrian rose from its seat. "Honored speaker, while we sympathize with the humans' unfortunate situation, we must remember that the Outer Rim territories are largely unclaimed space. If the humans chose to settle in dangerous areas without proper military protection, they must accept the consequences." Jake felt his jaw clench, but he kept his voice calm. "Ambassador Slektha, these colonies were established with full council approval. They followed all proper procedures and paid all required fees. They were legal settlements under galactic law." Another delegate, this one from the crystalline Vorth species, began to glow with soft purple light. When Vorth glowed like that, it meant they were about to say something important. "Representative Morrison, your species has been part of this council for 30 years. In that time, you have shown yourselves to be peaceful traders and mediators. This is admirable, but perhaps it has made you soft. The galaxy is not always a gentle place. Sometimes weaker species must adapt to reality rather than expect others to protect them." The chamber filled with more clicking sounds and the alien equivalent of chuckles. Jake realized with growing anger that many of the delegates found humanity's situation funny. They saw humans as naive children who had wandered into danger and were now crying for help. Jake looked up at the viewing gallery where he knew Ambassador Lisa Hayes was watching. She had been his partner in diplomatic efforts for 3 years. Her face was pale with anger, but she gave him a small nod of encouragement. "Honored delegates, Jake said, raising his voice slightly. I am not asking for your protection out of weakness. I am asking for justice under the law. The Kethvar Empire has violated multiple council treaties by attacking civilian settlements. If you allow this to continue, what message does that send to other aggressive species? The speaker seemed to consider this. The human makes a valid point. War crimes against civilians are indeed serious matters. However, we must also consider the political implications of taking action against the Kethvar Empire. They are a powerful member of this council. Jake could not believe what he was hearing. The council was more worried about politics than about innocent people being enslaved. He tried one more approach. Then at least authorize a peacekeeping force to evacuate the remaining human colonies. We have civilians, including children, who are in immediate danger. The Zephyrian delegate made that laughing sound again. Representative Morrison, your emotional attachment to your own species is understandable but not practical. Perhaps if humans had invested more in military capabilities instead of trade goods, you would not be in this situation. The chamber erupted in more alien laughter. Jake stood there for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. These beings saw human suffering as entertainment. They thought human pleas for help were jokes. Finally, the speaker called for order. The council will take the human petition under advisement. We will form a committee to study the matter and report back in 6 standard months. 6 months. Jake knew that in 6 months there might not be any human colonies left to save. He gave a formal bow to the speaker, as protocol required. Thank you for your time, honored delegates, he said. Then he walked out of the chamber with measured steps, his back straight and his face calm. But inside, Jake Morrison was burning with rage. And somewhere in orbit above the council station, Admiral Sam Carter was waiting for his report. Carter would not be pleased to learn that diplomacy had failed so completely. As Jake left the great chamber, he activated a small communication device hidden in his sleeve. The message he sent was brief and coded, but its meaning was clear. They laughed at our pain. Recommend Protocol 7. The die was cast. Admiral Sam Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, staring out at the stars through the main view screen. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison's disastrous appearance before the Galactic Council. 3 weeks of watching the situation get worse while the galaxy's leaders did nothing. Admiral, we're receiving another distress signal, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the communications station. Her voice was tight with barely controlled anger. It's from the colony at Riverside. They're under attack. Sam closed his eyes for a moment. Riverside was home to 40,000 people, mostly families who had moved there to start new lives. Good people who had trusted the galaxy's promise of protection. How long until our nearest ship can reach them? Sam asked. 18 hours, sir, replied Commander Nick Thompson from the tactical station. But by then, he didn't need to finish. They all knew what would happen. The Kethvar moved fast. They would take what they wanted and disappear before any help could arrive. Sam activated his command screen and pulled up the latest intelligence reports. The news was all bad. 7 human colonies had gone dark in the past 3 weeks. Orbital monitoring stations had captured footage of Kethvar ships leaving those systems with cargo holds full of human prisoners. Even worse, the Kethvar had begun broadcasting their activities openly. They seemed proud of their work. Their communications showed human slaves working in mines and factories throughout Kethvar space. Men, women, and children forced to labor under terrible conditions. Admiral, Amy said, her voice cracking slightly, Riverside has stopped transmitting. Another colony gone. Another 40,000 people lost to slavery or death. Sam felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He had served in the human military for 30 years, but he had never felt anger like this. The bridge door opened, and Jake Morrison walked in. The diplomat looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 3 weeks. His usually perfect appearance was rumpled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Any word from the council? Sam asked, though he already knew the answer. Jake shook his head. They're still forming committees. The Zephyrian delegate told me today that humans need to be more patient with the democratic process. He laughed bitterly. Patient, while our people are being enslaved. What about the other species? Surely some of them see this as wrong. Few of the minor powers have expressed sympathy, Jake said. But none of them are willing to act. They're all afraid of the Kethvar. He paused, then added quietly, or they simply don't care what happens to humans. Sam turned back to the view screen. In the distance, he could see the massive council station where hundreds of species gathered to discuss galactic affairs. It looked peaceful and civilized, but Sam knew better now. Civilization was just a thin layer of paint over the same brutal reality that had always existed. Admiral, Nick said suddenly, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's marked with presidential codes. Sam straightened. Communications from Earth's president were rare and always important. Put it through to my ready room. Jake, you should hear this too. They walked to the small office behind the bridge. Sam activated his secure communication system, and the face of President Danny Walsh appeared on the screen. The president looked grim. Sam, Jake, I've been following your reports. The situation is unacceptable. Walsh's voice was calm, but Sam could hear steel underneath. I've spoken with the Joint Chiefs and the Colonial Council. We cannot allow this to continue. Mr. President, Jake said, the diplomatic options aren't exhausted yet. I could try approaching individual species leaders, or perhaps, Walsh held up a hand. Jake, you've done good work. But diplomacy only works when both sides want peace. The Kethvar don't want peace. They want slaves, and the Council doesn't care enough about human lives to stop them. Sam felt his pulse quicken. He thought he knew where this conversation was heading. Mr. President, Sam said carefully, what are your orders? I'm authorizing Protocol 7, Walsh said. The words hit the room like a physical blow. General Chris Bennett is already moving assets into position. You'll receive detailed orders within the hour. Jake looked confused. What's Protocol 7? Sam and the president exchanged looks. Jake was a diplomat, not a military man. There were things he didn't know about humanity's true capabilities. Jake, the president said gently, for the past 30 years humanity has presented itself to the galaxy as a peaceful trading species. That wasn't entirely false, but it wasn't the complete truth either. We chose to be peaceful. That doesn't mean we forgot how to be something else. I don't understand, Jake said. Sam activated another screen and pulled up files that Jake had never seen before. Ship designs, weapon specifications, hidden military installations throughout human space. While we were building farms and trade stations, Sam explained, we were also building other things. The galaxy thinks our technology is 50 years behind theirs. They think our ships are slow cargo haulers and our weapons are outdated. We let them think that. Jake stared at the screen in shock. The ship designs looked nothing like the vessels he knew about. These were sleek, deadly, and clearly built for war. How many of these ships do we have? Jake asked quietly. Enough, the president said. Sam, your orders are to maintain your current position and continue diplomatic contact with the Council. Let them think we're still trying to solve this peacefully. General Bennett will handle the rest. The transmission ended, leaving Sam and Jake alone in the ready room. Jake slumped in his chair, looking overwhelmed. All this time, Jake said slowly, we could have stopped them. We could have saved those colonies. No, Sam said firmly. We gave diplomacy a real chance. We followed the rules and tried to work within the system. The galaxy chose to ignore us. What happens next is on them, not us. As if summoned by his words, Amy's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, we're receiving a broadcast from Kethvar space. It's being transmitted on all Council frequencies. They returned to the bridge and watched in horror as the main screen showed a Kethvar command center. War Master Thekval, the Kethvar military leader, stood before the camera. Behind him, human prisoners worked in chains. Citizens of the galaxy, Thekval said in his growling voice, witness the proper place of the human species. They make excellent workers when properly motivated. Any species that wishes to purchase human laborers may contact our trade representatives. He gestured to the prisoners behind him. These specimens from the Riverside colony are already showing good progress in their training. The young ones learn particularly quickly. The broadcast ended. The bridge was silent for a long moment. "Admiral," Nick said quietly. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted." "I hope General Bennett burns their entire empire to ash." Sam nodded. Slowly. He was thinking the same thing. Somewhere out in the dark between stars, humanity's true fleet was moving. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had been holding back for 30 years, and now the leash was off. Colonel Steve Parker sat in the hidden command center buried deep beneath Earth's surface. The room hummed with activity as dozens of officers worked at stations filled with screens and controls. This place did not officially exist. According to all public records, the space where they sat was nothing but solid rock. "Colonel," called Major Kate Johnson from across the room. "Phoenix stations are reporting ready status. All assets are in position." Steve nodded and turned to the massive display screen that dominated one wall of the command center. It showed the galaxy in 3 dimensions, with thousands of tiny lights marking human positions. Most people looking at this display would see cargo ships, mining stations, and research vessels scattered throughout known space. They would be wrong. "Activate Operation Reveal Stone," Steve said calmly. Across the galaxy, things that had appeared harmless for 30 years suddenly showed their true nature. The cargo ship UES Memphis, which had been carrying grain to the Zephyrian homeworld for 5 years, dropped its false hull plating to reveal weapon systems that made most military vessels look like toys. The research station orbiting the gas, giant Kepler 442b, extended hidden antenna arrays and powered-up communication systems that could reach every corner of the galaxy. On mining platforms, agricultural worlds, and trading posts throughout human space, the same transformation was happening. What the galaxy had seen as civilian infrastructure was revealing itself to be the largest military network ever constructed. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Danny Brooks from the intelligence station, "our assets are confirming that most alien military forces are still unaware of the change. They're continuing normal operations." That was exactly what Steve had hoped to hear. For 30 years, humanity had played a careful game. They had shown the galaxy enough of their technology to be useful, trading partners, but never enough to be seen as a threat. Every human merchant ship that visited alien ports had been gathering intelligence. Every diplomatic mission had been mapping defensive positions. Every cultural exchange had been identifying weaknesses in alien military doctrine. The galaxy thought they knew humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. "Colonel, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Carter at the Council Station," reported Kate. Steve activated his communication system. Admiral Carter's face appeared on his screen, with Jake Morrison visible in the background. "Steve, what's our status?" Carter asked. "All Phoenix assets are active and ready. We have eyes on every major alien military installation and most of their government centers. Intelligence estimates we have a 48-hour window before they realize what's happened." Carter nodded grimly. "The Council is meeting an emergency session. Thekaval is here personally to gloat about his latest acquisitions. He brought video evidence of human children working in his labor camps." Steve felt his jaw clench. He had seen those reports. The images of human children, some as young as 8 years old, forced to work in dangerous mining operations, while Kethvar overseers watched with amusement. "Sir," Steve said, "recommend we accelerate the timeline. The longer we wait, the more innocent people suffer." "Agreed," Carter said. "Jake will make one final diplomatic appeal to the Council. When that fails, we implement the plan." The transmission ended. Steve turned to address his command staff. These were men and women who had spent their careers preparing for this moment, knowing it might never come. They had hoped it would never come. "All stations prepare for full operational deployment," Steve announced. "Authorization code Phoenix 77 Alpha. Begin Phase 1 operations in 30 minutes. Across the command center, officers began activating systems that had been hidden for decades. Deep space listening posts that had masqueraded as scientific research stations began tracking alien fleet movements. Manufacturing facilities that had appeared to produce farming equipment started rolling out weapons and military vehicles. Transport, ships that had been moving civilian goods for years, suddenly revealed cargo holds full of soldiers and military supplies. "Colonel," called Major Tom Wilson from the tactical station, "we're detecting increased HFY fleet activity near the Proxima sector. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to hit the colonies at New Austin and Pioneer Falls." Steve studied the tactical display. New Austin had 200,000 residents. Pioneer Falls was smaller, but it was home to one of humanity's most important agricultural research centers. Both targets would provide the HFY with valuable slaves and resources. "How long until they reach those systems?" Steve asked. 16 hours at current speed," Tom replied. "And how long until our assets can intercept?" Tom smiled grimly. "The UES Retribution is already in position at New Austin. They've been disguised as a mining barge for the past 6 months. The UES Vengeance is 4 hours out from Pioneer Falls." Steve allowed himself a small smile. The Retribution and Vengeance were two of humanity's newest battleships, equipped with weapons technology that was at least 50 years ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. The HFY forces approaching those colonies expected to face helpless civilians and maybe a few lightly armed patrol boats. They were in for a surprise. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Amy Chang from the communications station, "we're receiving reports from our merchant fleet. Several HFY patrol ships have approached human cargo vessels in the past hour. They appear to be attempting boarding. Operations." "Are our people safe?" Steve asked. Amy grinned. "The HFY boarding parties never made it onto our ships. Apparently their assault shuttles suffered sudden mechanical failures. Very explosive mechanical failures." Steve nodded. The galaxy was about to learn that human merchants had been carrying more than trade goods in their cargo holds. "Colonel," Kate called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the council station. It's Admiral Carter." Steve activated his communication system again. This time Carter looked angry. "The council has refused our final diplomatic appeal," Carter reported. "Thekval actually laughed when Jake described the suffering of human children. He said, and I quote, 'Perhaps if humans had evolved spines instead of sentiment, they would not make such excellent slaves.'" "The vote?" Steve asked. "Unanimous decision to take no action. They've decided that human settlements in contested space are acceptable targets for any species strong enough to take them." Steve felt something cold settle in his chest. For 30 years, humanity had hoped that civilization and law would protect them. They had believed that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. The galaxy had just proven them wrong. "Authorization confirmed," Steve said. "Implement Phoenix Protocol. All assets are weapons free." He turned to address the command center. "Ladies and gentlemen, for 3 decades we have watched and waited. We have hoped that peace would prevail. We gave the galaxy every chance to prove that justice and law were more than pretty words." He paused, looking at each of his officers. "They chose to laugh at our pain instead. They chose to ignore the suffering of innocence. They chose to treat human beings as property to be bought and sold." Steve activated the main communication array, which would reach every human military asset in the galaxy. "This is Command Authority Alpha. Operation Phoenix is now active. Rules of engagement are weapons free against all HFY forces and any species that attempt to interfere with our operations. Priority targets are all slave facilities containing human prisoners." He paused for a moment, then added, "We offered them diplomacy. We begged for justice. We pleaded for the lives of innocents. They laughed." Steve's voice grew cold as steel. "They will not be laughing for much longer. Phoenix Command out." Across the galaxy, humanity revealed its true face. The species that had seemed weak and peaceful for 30 years showed why they had conquered an entire star system before they ever left their homeworld. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not prey animals who had learned to trade. They were apex predators who had chosen to be civilized. That choice had just been revoked. War Master Thekval stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Fang, as his fleet approached the human colony at New Austin. The massive HFY dreadnought led a force of 30 warships, more than enough to overwhelm any defenses the weak humans might have prepared. "War Master," reported his tactical officer. Sensors show only civilian structures and a single mining vessel in orbit. No military vessels detected. Thekval made the Kethvar sound that indicated satisfaction. Excellent. Begin standard approach. Signal the mining vessel to surrender or be destroyed. The human colony below held 200,000 potential slaves. The Kethvar had already prepared holding facilities for them. The strong ones would work in the mines, the clever ones would maintain equipment, and the young ones would be trained from childhood to serve their new masters. War Master, the communications officer called out. The mining vessel is responding to our surrender demand. Put it on screen, Thekval ordered. The main view screen flickered and showed the bridge of what appeared to be a simple human cargo hauler. A woman in plain work clothes sat in the captain's chair. She looked tired and afraid, exactly what Thekval expected from a weak human. This is Captain Betty Lewis of the mining vessel Lucky Strike, she said. Her voice shook slightly. We're just here to extract minerals. We don't want any trouble. Thekval laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. Captain Lewis, you have two options. Surrender your vessel and submit to processing, or be destroyed where you sit. You have 60 seconds to decide. The human woman looked around her small bridge nervously. My crew, they're just miners and engineers. They don't deserve to die. Then surrender, Thekval growled. Your deaths would be wasteful. Living slaves are much more valuable. Captain Lewis was quiet for a moment. Then she looked directly at Thekval through the screen. Something changed in her expression. The fear disappeared, replaced by something cold and hard. War Master Thekval, she said calmly, I have a message for you from the human government. Speak quickly, Thekval snapped. Captain Lewis smiled, and Thekval suddenly realized it was not a pleasant smile at all. We offered you diplomacy, she said. You chose slavery. We offered you peace. You chose war. We offered you justice. You chose to laugh at the suffering of children. The image on the screen began to change. The simple mining vessel bridge was transforming before Thekval's eyes. Walls slid away to reveal advanced military equipment. The woman's plain work clothes flickered and disappeared, revealing a crisp naval uniform covered with military decorations. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed too far. Captain Lewis continued. Congratulations, War Master. You're about to get your wish. The mining vessel Lucky Strike shed its disguise like a snake shedding skin. The battered hull plating fell away to reveal sleek armor underneath. Hidden weapon ports opened along its sides. The simple cargo hauler expanded and reconfigured itself into something that looked nothing like any ship design the galaxy had ever seen. What is that thing? Thekval's tactical officer whispered. Captain Lewis answered as if she had heard him. This is the UES Retribution, one of humanity's Nemesis-class battleships. For the past 6 months, we've been watching your empire enslave our people while pretending to be harmless miners. Warning alarms began screaming on the Kethvar flagship as sensors finally realized what they were looking at. The ship that had appeared to be a simple mining vessel was actually larger and more heavily armed than anything in Thekval's fleet. Impossible, Thekval snarled. Human technology is decades behind ours. Your ships are slow and weak. The ships you've seen were slow and weak, Captain Lewis agreed. But you've never actually seen a human warship before. We made sure of that. She leaned forward in her command chair. For 30 years, we've let you think we were prey. We traded with you, shared meals with you, even helped you resolve conflicts with other species. We did everything we could to be good neighbors. The Retribution finished its transformation and began moving toward Thekval's fleet. Its engines produced no visible exhaust, but it accelerated faster than anything that size should be able to move. We gave you every chance to be civilized, Captain Lewis continued. We begged your council to stop you from enslaving our people. We offered you fair compensation for any resources you needed. We even offered to relocate our colonies if that would prevent conflict. Thekval activated his fleet communications. All ships, open fire on the human vessel. Destroy it immediately. 30 Kethvar warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and missile salvos filled the space between the fleets. The firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. None of it touched the retribution. Some impossible energy field absorbed the weapon's fire and dissipated it harmlessly. The human battleship continued its approach without slowing down. "Your weapons are impressive," Captain Lewis noted calmly. "But we've been studying them for 3 decades. We know exactly how they work and exactly how to stop them." The retribution returned fire with a single weapon. A beam of pure white energy lanced out from its bow and struck the Keithvar cruiser Bloodfang. The massive alien warship simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field. One moment it was there, the next moment there was empty space. Thekval's bridge fell silent except for the sound of warning alarms. "You enslaved our children," Captain Lewis said, her voice carrying across the communication channel with deadly calm. "You forced them to work in your minds while you laughed about their tears. You broadcast their suffering as entertainment." Another white beam reached out from the retribution. Another Keithvar ship vanished without a trace. "We tried to be diplomats, we tried to be merchants, we tried to be your friends." Captain Lewis's voice was getting colder. "You taught us that the galaxy only respects strength." More beams fired from the human ship. The Keithvar fleet began to scatter, but the Retribution's weapons moved faster than they could run. Ship after ship simply disappeared under the onslaught of technology that was centuries beyond anything the galaxy had seen. "War Master," Thekval's tactical officer reported, his voice cracking with fear. "We've lost 18 ships. Recommend immediate retreat." Thekval stared at the screen where Captain Lewis sat calmly in her command chair, watching his fleet die. "This is impossible. Humans are weak. Humans are prey." Captain Lewis heard him and shook her head sadly. "No, War Master. Humans are the species that survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. We're the species that turned a deathworld into a garden. We're the species that built cities and then tore them down to build better ones." The Retribution moved closer, its weapons still firing with mechanical precision. The Keithvar fleet was down to 12 ships and falling fast. "We're the species that learned to split atoms and then chose not to destroy ourselves with them," Captain Lewis continued. "We're the species that reached for the stars because a single world wasn't big enough for our dreams. 8 ships left. 6. 4. We offered you our friendship, and you spat in our faces. We offered you our cooperation, and you chose exploitation. We offered you the chance to be better than your nature. 2 ships remaining, just Thekval's flagship and 1 escort. You chose to be monsters instead," Captain Lewis said. "So now you get to learn what monsters we can be when we need to be." The escort ship vanished in another flash of white light. Only the crushing Fang remained, alone in space with the impossible human warship. "Surrender," Captain Lewis said simply. "Drop your shields, power down your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. You will be taken to face justice for your crimes against humanity." Thekval looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. In less than 10 minutes, this human female had destroyed 29 warships without taking a single hit in return. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just been proven wrong. "If I surrender," he asked quietly, "what happens to my crew?" "Your crew will be treated according to the laws of war," Captain Lewis replied. "You, however, will face a tribunal for crimes against sentient beings. The evidence of your slave operations has been very thoroughly documented." Thekval realized he had no choice. The alternative was death for everyone aboard his ship. "I surrender," he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "Wise choice," Captain Lewis said. Then her expression hardened again. "Now we're going to visit every slave facility in your empire, and you're going to help us free every single human you've taken." As boarding shuttles launched from the Retribution toward the Keithvar flagship, Captain Lewis opened a communication channel to the human colony below. "New Austin Control, this is the Retribution. The threat has been eliminated, you are safe." But even as she said it, Betty Lewis knew that the real war was just beginning. The galaxy thought they had seen humanity's true face today. They were wrong. This was just the beginning. President Danny Walsh stood on the command bridge of the UES Sovereign, as the massive human battleship entered orbit around the Galactic Council homeworld. Through the main view screen, he could see the elegant spires and crystal domes of the Council station where hundreds of alien species had gathered to discuss the sudden appearance of humanity's true military might. It had been 2 weeks since Captain Betty Lewis destroyed the Kethvar fleet at New Austin. In those 14 days, the galaxy had watched in stunned silence as human forces swept through Kethvar space like an unstoppable tide. Every slave facility had been found and liberated. Every Kethvar military installation had been destroyed or captured. The mighty Kethvar Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, had simply ceased to exist. "Mr. President," reported Admiral Sam Carter from his position at the tactical station, "all human fleets are in position. We have ships in orbit around every major alien homeworld and military installation in the galaxy." Danny nodded. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had sent shockwaves through every government in known space. Some species had immediately offered their full cooperation and support. Others had tried to organize resistance, only to discover that human intelligence networks had been watching them for 30 years and knew exactly where all their weapons were hidden. "Sir," called Commander Kate Johnson from the communications station, "the Council is requesting permission to hold an emergency session. They want to negotiate terms." Danny almost smiled at that. 3 weeks ago, the Council had laughed at human pleas for justice. Now they wanted to negotiate. "Tell them we'll hold the session aboard the Sovereign," Danny said. "They can come to us this time." Within an hour, the main conference room of the human flagship was filled with alien delegates. The same beings who had dismissed human concerns now sat nervously around a table designed for human proportions, forced to use smaller chairs and breathing apparatus to survive in the ship's atmosphere. Jake Morrison sat at Danny's right hand, no longer the desperate diplomat pleading for help. Admiral Carter was on the president's left, his calm presence a reminder of the military might that now backed every word spoken in this room. The Zephyrian delegate, Slektha, was the first to speak. His serpentine form coiled nervously as he addressed the humans. "President Walsh, the Council wishes to express our deep regret for the misunderstanding that led to recent hostilities." Danny raised an eyebrow. "Misunderstanding?" "Ambassador Slektha, there was no misunderstanding. We showed you evidence of slavery and genocide. We begged for your help. You laughed at us and told us to accept reality." The crystalline Vorth delegate began to glow with nervous purple light. "President Walsh, we must consider the larger political implications of these events. The sudden appearance of such advanced human military technology has created instability throughout the galaxy." "Good," Danny said simply. The old stability was built on the strong preying on the weak, while everyone else looked the other way. That stability needed to be destroyed. Jake leaned forward and activated a holographic display showing images from the liberated Kethvar slave facilities. The aliens in the room recoiled as they saw human children, some as young as 6 years old, who had been forced to work in dangerous mining operations. These children were taken from their families and forced into slavery, while you debated the political implications of helping them. Jake said, "We tried to work within your system. Your system failed them." Admiral Carter stood and walked to the large view screen that dominated one wall of the conference room. With the touch of a button, it showed a real-time tactical display of the galaxy. Hundreds of human ships were visible, positioned over every major alien world. "For 30 years we pretended to be weak," Carter said. "We let you think our ships were slow cargo haulers and our weapons were obsolete. We did this because we believed in the idea of a peaceful galactic civilization." He turned back to face the alien delegates. "You have taught us that such civilization does not exist. You have shown us that the galaxy respects only force. Very well. We have force." The Zephyrian delegate made placating gestures with his upper arms. "Surely we can reach some accommodation. The Council is prepared to offer significant concessions to restore peaceful relations." Danny leaned back in his chair and studied the alien. "What kind of concessions?" "Full restitution for all human losses," Slektha said quickly. "Compensation for destroyed colonies, return of all captured property, formal apologies from the Kethvar leadership." The Kethvar leadership is dead, Admiral Carter said flatly. We tried their surviving officers for crimes against sentient beings. Most of them were executed. The rest are serving life sentences in prison facilities that make their own slave. Camps look comfortable. Several alien delegates shifted nervously at this news. The Kethvar had been one of the galaxy's major military powers. The fact that humanity had not only defeated them but completely destroyed their leadership sent a clear message about human capabilities. "What do you want from us?" asked the Vorth delegate. Danny stood and walked to the view screen. He stared out at the council station for a long moment before answering. "We want justice," he said finally. "Not just for humans, but for every species that has been preyed upon by stronger neighbors while the council did nothing." He turned back to face the room. "We want an end to slavery in all its forms. We want protection for civilian populations. During conflicts, we want actual enforcement of galactic law, not endless committees that meet to discuss forming other committees." Jake activated another holographic display, this one showing a detailed legal document. "We have prepared a new Galactic Charter. It establishes basic rights for all sentient beings and creates enforcement mechanisms to protect those rights." The alien delegates studied the document with growing alarm. It would fundamentally change how the galaxy operated, stripping power from the traditional strong and giving protection to species that had previously been victims. This charter would give smaller species equal representation in galactic affairs, the Zephyrian delegate protested. It would undermine the natural order. The natural order, Danny said coldly, produced slave markets and genocide while the galaxy's leaders ate expensive meals and debated procedure. That natural order is finished. Admiral Carter activated his communication system. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Carter. Begin demonstration maneuvers." Through the view screen, the alien delegates watched as human ships throughout the galaxy began moving in perfect coordination. Weapons that could destroy planets charged to full power. Shields that had easily absorbed the best alien weapons flickered to life. "You have two choices," Danny said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You can accept the new charter and help us build a galaxy where justice actually means something. Or you can resist and we will impose justice without your cooperation." The Vorth delegate pulsed with rapid flashes of light, indicating extreme agitation. "You cannot simply dictate terms to the entire galaxy. There are hundreds of species represented in the council, and every single one of them has human ships in their home systems right now," Jake pointed out. "Ships that have been watching and learning for 30 years. We know where your governments meet, where your military bases are hidden, where your leaders live." Danny returned to his seat and leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "We offered you friendship and got exploitation in return. We offered you cooperation and got laughter. We offered you the chance to do the right thing, voluntarily." He paused, letting his words sink in. "That offer has expired. The galaxy will have justice whether it wants it or not. The only question is whether you help us build something better or force us to tear down what exists first." The conference room fell silent as the alien delegates realized they had no real choice. The species they had dismissed as weak merchants had revealed themselves to be the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. "How long do we have to decide?" Slektha asked quietly. "You have already decided," Danny said. "The moment you chose to ignore human suffering, you made this outcome inevitable. The moment you laughed at our children in chains, you sealed your fate." Jake stood and walked to a small podium at the front of the room. "The new charter takes effect immediately. Enforcement fleets are already moving to systems where violations have been documented. Slavery will end, civilian populations will be protected, and justice will be enforced." He looked around the room at faces that had once been amused by human desperation. "We came to you as friends seeking justice through law. You chose to mock our pain instead." Admiral Carter joined Jake at the podium. "Today you learn what humanity is truly capable of when forced to abandon diplomacy. We are not merchants who learned to fight. We are warriors who chose to build instead of destroy." President Walsh stood and moved to the view screen one final time. "The galaxy will be a better place now, not because we wanted to conquer it, but because you forced us to save it. He turned back to the alien delegates. We offered you the chance to be our partners in building something better. You chose to be obstacles instead. History will remember that choice.